Hi, welcome to the Israel First television program from our studios in Jerusalem. Great to have you with us. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Blackham. I'm with my wife Nathalie Blackham, and with a program that brings you news and behind the scenes and teaching from a Hebraic perspective from the land of Israel. And we're here in Jerusalem today to tell you what's really going on. We've been telling you about the One World Government, New World Order, about what's happening with the construction, massive amount of construction going on in Israel. But is it for the Israeli people? Sadly not. So who's it for, you say, Martin? Well, it is for the global elites, and it's for the people who are part of this end time one world government system. Now, it's interesting if you look in history, Nathalie, that the nation of Israel in 1948 was created by the Zionists. Obviously, the United Nations voted in favor of the creation of the land of Israel, but it was the Zionists who built the land, and they were particularly picked people who were like themselves from the nations. And so that's how this nation began, with a certain, you could say, clique of people, or a certain membership of people, or a certain association of people who came here to start the land. Obviously, we know that God called the land of Israel to be a nation again, the Jewish people to come back from the nations. But that's how it was created, and it's similar to what's going on today in the city of Jerusalem as it's getting ready for the global elites. The average Jerusalemite cannot afford the price of these apartments that are being built. So we're going to go straight into what's happening in the news. Well, one of the big developments is that Israeli cyber firms have developed new spyware. We're talking about the tracking of people. This is one of the things of the last days, is the monitoring, tracking, or surveillance. Some people call it the surveillance society, and this is what's happening in Israel. The Israeli cyber firm, it's been revealed in an investigation by news media that an Israeli cyber firm companies have developed technology that exploits the advertising system at the heart of the online economy to monitor civilians, to hack into their telephones and computers and spy on them. We're being monitored. Now, this is something that has been happening for a while, but I think as I tell you the story, you'll see how it all fits together. Technology firms and advertisers know almost everything about us, what we are, what we buy, which apps we download, and how we use them, our search histories, past purchases. There's only one thing that advertisers don't or aren't supposed to know or have access to, is our identity. The world of ads and the data behind them is meant to be anonymous. We've all been there, and this is what happens to us. We've read the post of a friend, or we've been on the phone, or just got back from holiday, and a few hours later, guess what? A hotel pops up on our screen or on our telephone, and similar ones hound us for days. Or if we've been to buy a product, guess what? That product and a number of other products and their prices suddenly pop up on your screen. Follow us across websites. I don't know if you've noticed, but if you've looked for something, you wanted something for the car or the home or to go on holiday, and then suddenly you notice the product you were looking for is all over the websites, all over your phone. And this has been happening to us for a period of time, really. But in Israel, they have investigated it, and they have found that there is a complex system that makes this all possible. And by the way, this is an aggressive market. What we don't realize is that what's happening behind the scenes is very competitive. There's a whole economy of the internet playing out in a split second. A fraction of the moment that elapses until the page we want opens, an automatic bidding process occurs between hundreds of thousands of different advertisers. I bet you didn't know that. They are fighting to advertise exactly to us in that exact moment of time. The more accurate the information the advertisers have about us, the more segmented and targeted the data. and greater the chances that we'll actually click, and thus the price of the ad increases for the advertiser. But some have ability to take advantage of that fraction of a second to perform a much more malicious mission, to send people a distinctive, seemingly innocent ad that contains advanced spyware. So they're using these adverts, they're hiding underneath spyware. Though the advertisement looks completely standard, it is in fact a cyber weapon that is capable of infiltrating our telephone or computer. In the past, it was believed only state intelligence organizations had this, Nathalie, but now there is a whole world of digital advertising which is taking advantage of this anomaly that we have adverts on our phones, on our computers. And unfortunately, Apple, Google, Microsoft and all the other, they are just as bad as the other people. These capabilities can turn into a digital bullet, said a source familiar with the technology. The new technology has also begun to trickle out into the commercial defense market. Under the shadow of COVID, that was when all of this technology was coming in. Interestingly enough, when certain tools, that's computer tools, were developed and deployed to track and the spread of allegedly for the spread of the virus. A new and disturbing cyber and espionage industry has come into being in Israel. A number of Israeli firms have developed technologies that are capable of exploiting advertising to collect data and monitor citizens. Hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people can be monitored in this way. So Israel first, so this is happening in Israel. So guess what? It's happening where you are. This is happening all over the world, this spying. The investigation further reveals that a small group of elite companies have taken things a step further. They have created technology that use ads for offensive purposes, injecting spyware. As millions of ads compete for the right to penetrate on our screen, Israeli firms are clandestinely. Israel is really the leader in this field of spyware, by the way, selling technology that transforms these ads into tools of surveillance or into weapons that are capable of penetrating our computers and our mobile phones.
I mean, when you think about it, we have to take a step back and look at what's happening now. Our computer and our telephone is on almost 24 hours. I mean, not 24 hours, but it's like they are picking up things, information from our computers and our telephone. But I think a few years ago, we did not have that. We knew the world without computers and without telephone, so they couldn't influence inside of us, inside of our lives. And now, it's like good things have been turned into bad dreams, I would say, in one way. And when you say that, this reminds me, in 1997, when we came back from Africa, we were adopting a girl from over there, our daughter, one of our daughter. And when we came back to England, I was in the sitting room and I was praying. And because we went to Africa, it's like we were renewed in one way to look at the world also in a different way. And God started to speak to me saying, and I was reading the story, the history of Exodus for the Jewish people when they were going to get out of slavery and going to go into the promised land. Why? To worship God. This was the purpose. So you will worship me. They weren't going over there just to have their freedom. They were going over there to be free to worship him. Okay? And God said very clearly to me, and it can still ring in my ears, is like the Jewish people went through the redemption and went out of the slavery. And now you will see in your life the same for the world.
Mm-hmm.
And it really, it was really ringing in me. I was like, wow. And he was saying the blueprint that happened to them will be the blueprint for the redemption, the final redemption. Now, at that time, we didn't have our Jewish roots. We just started to say, well, maybe we need to know more about the Bible. And it was just the right the beginning when God started to speak about the Hebrew, our Hebrew roots, okay, as Christians. So this is the blueprint. And this is amazing. If you read and take the time to read Exodus and to see at the beginning, you can see the Jewish people and Pharaoh, there is no differences when the plagues arrive. And slowly, one after one, you can see more and more difference. And in Goshen, where the Jewish people were living, there was light. There was no all the plagues. And it's very interesting to see the evolution of the redemption, step by step, how God has taken them out of Egypt. But not only that, is like he was also, at the same time, there was the freedom for the Jewish people, were his own people, and there was also the judgment for Egypt with all the gods, like Pharaoh was a god for them. If you see right at the beginning, why was he in the water? Is because he was going to release himself. And people, because he was a god, and the God don't do this kind of things. So he was going in the Nile for relieving himself. So there is a lot of understanding. You have to do some research. And all these things was like redemption and freedom for the people. And on the other way, it was the judgment for Pharaoh and Egypt and his army. And at the end, he was undone totally. And the Jewish people were free. So we need now to see, because a lot of people were asking, how is it going? Where are we going? We are going to the final redemption, where it's going to be the messianic time. On the 7th is like the 7th day. We spoke already a few times about that. And this is the blueprint. So we are going to see a difference more and more. And God is going to liberate us of all evil on earth. And we will be there on his earth to worship him. And this is what, the prayer of Yeshua when his disciples say, can you tell us how to pray? And he said, our Father that art in heaven, may your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. So this will happen. And when you say all what's happening is like the whole, I would say, Pharaoh system that we are seeing put in place and who is going to be undone at the end.
Yeah, and this is all part of the redemption. This is all part of the Exodus, that the Pharaoh is trying to control the people. He was in Egypt, he was trying to do that, and now we have the one world government through the different governments of the world trying to control their people through different means. And this is all part of that redemption process that we're going through, the squeeze the Jewish people had to go through. One of the interesting things is that whilst they were being squeezed, God kept them safe to bring them out of Egypt, to go to the land of Israel. So this is the things that are happening, and we have to believe God to keep us safe in the middle of all of the different squeezes through the surveillance society and through the spyware on phones and computers, etc. Now, we've got some very, very exciting news this week, Nathalie, haven't we? Natalie's going to tell you all about it. This week we went into Jerusalem because it says, why did we go to Jerusalem? I'm asking you today, for all our good friends out there, why did we have to go into Jerusalem for a book? And it's because, what does the Bible say? Out of Zion, God brings forth his word. And so out of Zion, out of Jerusalem, the word of God is coming. So we have the two things, and that's another thing we need to have the balance between the two. We need to see what's going on in the world, how it relates to the Bible and what they're really doing. We also need to see what God is doing, bringing us through the plagues, keeping us safe and getting us ready. Part of the process of the Exodus was to prepare the people, prepare the way of the Lord for his for the redemption, and in the case now for his return. So why were we in Jerusalem this week, Nathalie?
Because of that. And this is the book in Dutch. So the book is in English. I wrote it first in English, then I wrote it in French.
You have to say what the book is.
Oh yeah. Okay. Sure. But I wrote it in French because I'm French. And then I wrote it in German. I mean, we translated it in German because I feel that our German friends needed to get out of what's happened with the Holocaust and needed to have some freshness in the life to know what God is doing. And then some people from Holland were saying, please, we need to have the book. And so a friend of mine did the thing. So this is the beauty, written in Dutch, the beauty of the Hebrew language. And one of the the pivotal verse is Zephaniah 3:9, which is speaking that God will give us again. When you look, there is a lot of different translation, because you know how Hebrew sometimes is difficult to translate in different languages. But he's like, he will give us again, which means that we had it before, a pure language, which is the Hebrew language when you look, and I will tell you why after. And this was to worship him again. Mm-hmm. We go back, is the things to know him better, to worship him together, and to be one, okay? It's like one shoulder. So it's like, we don't have two shoulders, one. So it's like they will have a unity. I mean, there is an amazing teaching all about that. We spoke about it a few years ago, but maybe I will have to go back again to it, because it's something really new, something really with the Hebrew language that you can see that you can't see when it's the other languages, but like it's something that God is doing, and this is just amazing. Now, how do people will say, well, it's only written pure language? There is a long story, you can read it in the book. But the thing is, and one day I was speaking on the radio about the book, and somebody from America, this was in Australia, and from Jerusalem, it's just amazing. And when we say like the Torah will come out of Jerusalem and go all the way to the world. So it was a radio show in Australia, but somebody from America was listening to it. And at the end of the show, he wrote me an email and said, do you know something? That Zephaniah 3:8, so obviously the verse just before 3:9, why God says he's going to give us a pure language, in that verse is the only verse in all the Bible who has the 22 letters of the alphabet, plus there is 5 letters who change their shape when they are at the end of a name. And so there's 25 plus 22 plus 5, 27. These 27 letters are in the verse. Is the only place. And it was like a pointer. God was saying, look, I'm telling you something in verse 9, and it is the truth. It is the Hebrew language. Now, to give you a tiny bit of the story, is like when I discovered that again, I was praying and I felt God saying to me, this is the Hebrew language. And I said, but it's not written now. Am I getting a bit like funny? And so I found a friend who is Jewish. And I say, listen, I need to know, this is what I felt that God is saying in my heart, that this is the Hebrew language, but it is not written. And she said, oh my dear, of course it is. And I said, but it's my dear for you, because you've learned things, and a lot of Jewish people know that. But a lot of Christians, we don't know, and we need to be aware. And coming into the final redemption, the Hebrew will be used again for worshiping God, because there is a power in the Hebrew language. There is an understanding to see when you read it in Hebrew, the Bible, I tell you, it's like straight to your heart. There is like a purity, which is what he said, a pure language. There is something who just pierces your soul. And no other language does that. So when I was starting to discover all these things, I said, okay, I need not to discover it just for me. I need to write a book. And this was already, it was in 2011 that we've done the first edition, and we've done a few editions since. So it's just amazing.
Yeah, and if you'd like information about how you can get the book, it's all on the website. And there's an ebook for those who like to read them on their phones or laptops. You can get the ebook as well. All the information is there. You just click on the Hebrew book button, okay, on the website, and there's how to buy it. If you have any difficulties, then please do contact us, and we'll see what we can do to help.
And the website is israelfirst.org. Very simple.
That's right. So, it's something which will be really a great blessing to you. It's a small book, and it's compact, and it gives you a very good introduction to the Hebrew letters, and it's not complicated.
That's it. Yes,
you're right. Book.
You're right. I did it this way because a lot of people say, no, it's not for me. It's for the expert. And no, it's for every one of us, because God loves us so much. He gave us the Torah. He gave us the Bible. This is the most precious gift that God has given us. And when you read it in Hebrew, when you start, there is so many treasures that God wants to give us. And it's like, this is part of the redemption. The Torah will come out of Zion. This is Isaiah 2.
And we were talking about Pharaoh and the squeezing, and it's interesting. If you look at the Exodus, you can see that actually Egypt was locked down. There was lockdown, so that's interesting where that comes from. And this week, Prime Minister Netanyahu of Israel was where? He was in California to meet controversial businessman Elon Musk to discuss what an AI directorate they're going to set up in the Prime Minister's office, which is unusual to set up a directorate to have a specific arm of the Prime Minister's office of Israel doing this. They're going to set up an artificial AI directorate that will function as part of the Israeli Prime Minister's office. And so he was in San Francisco, in the Bay Area, where he said he intended to meet the current leader of the most dramatic development in the current age. And this is Elon Musk, the businessman. And he said, this is what Netanyahu said. He says he's paving the way that will change the face of humanity. And also, this is very important, the state of Israel. Will change the face of the state of Israel. This is what Netanyahu said. Israel needs to be a leader in artificial intelligence. And Netanyahu made references to precision medicine, that's AI medicine, and the introduction of all the different AI things they're doing, and in particular smart hospitals in Israel. Robot caregivers, not really sure how they give care, but anyway, that's what he mentioned for the elderly. The robots that go around and look after people, allegedly. And then advanced agriculture, which we've talked about this before. It's putting people out of work, and
and it's artificial artificial meat.
And so then we go into the further things of AI in journalism. We've talked about that on the program before, the replacement of journalism by artificial intelligence created stories. So, and also we've talked about on the program, you're going to have to go back into previous programs to see this, but we've spoken about artificial intelligence in production of news programs, that the people you see on the screen are not real. They are artificially generated icons onto the screen, and the news is also artificially generated. And by the way, Ynet mainstream news in Israel is already showing these videos as part of its reference of videos on its main news page, these artificial intelligence generated news stories and videos. The conversation, by the way, between Netanyahu and Musk was later open to OpenAI president and co-founder Greg Brockman and MIT, that's the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, physicist and machine learning researcher Max Tegmark. By the way, machine learning is really computers trying to learn what to do. A good example of machine learning is these automatic cars or self-driving cars, which are based on machine learning. They teach them different things, when to stop. So for example, a crossing or when a traffic light stops on red, they have to stop. So this is all machine learning of artificial intelligence. And by the way, Israel is a leader in this, Nathalie, in this technology, and it's something, and it's all connected. You may say, well, how is it connected? Well, guess what? If you're driving an electric car or a Tesla, they can just stop if someone presses a button, and that's the technology. It's a part of the control system. I said at the beginning, the tracking of people. Netanyahu was given a tour of the factory and was shown robot workers. Again, robots taking over jobs which were previously done by humans. And this is causing a huge wave in the employment industry, because people are being put out of work who used to be doing creative work in the factories, doing the manufacturing work, and now being putting out of work by robots. And so they were taken around the factory, and Netanyahu was given a ride in a self-driving vehicle and in a self-driving truck. They're doing self-driving trucks. I don't know how you feel about these things. We talked about the dangers of self-driving vehicles. They're actually in Israel, and we've mentioned this before on the program, having autonomous buses. In other words, buses which have no driver and just go around. And then somebody put that it's an accident waiting to happen, that the bus just does its own thing, which is fine if everything's working. But what if there's a storm, or the tracks, it can't communicate with the track, loses contact? These are very real dangers that can happen. And also, by the way, I talked about the self-driving taxis in Tel Aviv, Nathalie, that they are promoting these taxis, and I think even maybe minibuses in Tel Aviv as well. So these are all things that you'll see when you visit Israel. So all of this is part of Big Brother surveillance technology, and it's really like George Orwell's 1984, where there is a constant surveillance of the general public. If you want to see it really at its worst or at its highest level at the moment, you really have to go to the nation of China, where they're putting into public use all this public surveillance cameras, and you can't move around without facial recognition, which they're using for phones now. And there's also the digital currency. So we have all these different things, Nathalie, that are happening at the same time. Part of the Exodus is part of the redemption. Very important that you put it in its context, in its setting, so that you know where we're going. And it's true. We've been asked, where are we in all the middle of all of the things that are happening in the world,
and how can we see where we are? And I think it's because of that it's very important to look at the history of the Exodus and the step with the plagues, and the difference. More and more closer they were coming to the redemption, more the plagues were getting, like Egypt was getting destroyed slowly. But because there was a judgment on one side, and the other side there was the redemption, the freedom for the slave to be not slave anymore. So this is beautiful. There is so much, because the first commandment that God gave to the Jewish people was Rosh Chodesh, which was the new moon. Because when you're a slave, time doesn't belongs to you. But when you're a free man, time is in your hand again. And so it's because of that he gave his people the commandment of the new moon, saying, okay, time is in your hand again. I think it's just amazing.
Well, we're
and
talking of time. We've run out of time, Nathalie. We
Yeah.
ran out
Again.
of time for the program. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's a great pleasure to come into your homes and bring you news, what's really happening from the land of Israel, and explain what's happening in these last days, in these days when we're waiting for the return of the Messiah, that we're in the Exodus, seeing all the different things in the world. And we pray that this has been very helpful. If you would like to receive our news story, go to the website. You can see there's a Substack. Click on that, the Substack link, and you can get in your inbox our daily news story. Also, if you'd like to receive our e-newsletter that we do on a weekly basis, which has the news stories, plus Nathalie does some teaching from Hebraic perspective, you can get that by clicking on the e-newsletter. Thank you so much for everybody who's supporting us. We could not do this program if it wasn't for your help. And remember, we're the program that looks at the land, the people, and the language.